Colorado has some of the best access to beautiful landscapes of any of the states in our region. It's home to 4 national parks, 9 national monuments, 44 wilderness areas, and 14.5 million acres of National Forest and Grassland, as well as 637 peaks above 13,000 feet. Now, these landscapes sustain a thriving outdoor recreation economy and culture. According to a Parks and Wildlife study, Colorado's landscapes generate over $65 billion annually. These lands are public and belong to all of us to enjoy. We all deserve to reap the benefits of time spent outdoors. The issue is not everyone has the same access. Due to a variety of socio-economic factors, many people from underserved communities don't enjoy equal access. Natural spaces can be far away and time-consuming to get to, gear can be expensive, and for some families, outdoor spaces can feel unwelcoming and intimidating. Especially for families with children, outdoor recreation is expensive. Historically, many low-income and rural communities, people of color, members of the LGBTQIA community, and people with disabilities have faced significant barriers in accessing the wild spaces in Colorado and all over the West. This is a major issue because we know that spending time in nature has many mental, physical, and spiritual health benefits. For example, children that have more access to green space tend to be more curious, innovative, playful, and experience less stress and anxiety. Everyone should have access to these benefits, and in 2025, state legislatures have the chance to make that happen. In 2021, Colorado created the Outdoor Equity Grant Program to help underserved youth access the state's vast open spaces. And this year, WRA, alongside a coalition of supporters and grant recipients, is looking to expand funding for this wildly successful program. Since 2021, Colorado has awarded more than $8.5 million to programs that provide outdoor education and recreation opportunities to underserved youth and their families. To date, these grants have supported meaningful outdoor experiences for more than 65,000 Colorado youth in 51 out of Colorado's 64 counties. On today's episode of 2 Degrees Out West, learn what Colorado has been doing to get kids outside and how we could do even more. Welcome to 2 Degrees Out West, a podcast for advocates and decision makers seeking solutions to climate change and its impacts around the West. On 2 Degrees Out West, we talk with climate experts and advocates to bring you the stories, experiences, and insights from their work in the places we call home. On today's episode, outdoor equity in Colorado. But first, a word from our sponsor. First Bank puts banking for good into action with its many environmental initiatives. Since 2021, First Bank has planted over 110,000 trees across the Southwest, helping to improve air quality, preserve wildlife habitats, and conserve water. First Bank uses recovered ocean-bound plastic to help reduce ocean waste and provides digital banking options to reduce paper usage. Additionally, First Bank employees receive 2 full days of volunteer time off to support nonprofits, many of which support habitat conservation, wildlife preservation, and biodiversity protection. To learn more, visit efirstbank.com. This is Jared Bynum.
I grew up just east of Denver in Aurora, and I've been an avid outdoors kid, I guess, for as long as I can remember.
His enthusiasm for Colorado's landscapes is infectious. He's spent his whole life exploring Colorado.
From horseback riding and four-wheeling at my grandparents' old ranch in Montana, camping, rafting, and skiing as a Boy Scout, to hiking, backpacking, and now bird watching as an adult. It's really hard to think of an outdoor activity I haven't tried and loved.
He's one of the people leading the charge in getting more Colorado youth outside.
I describe myself as an environmental justice advocate, and I work with community members, policy experts, and lawmakers to craft solutions to some of our most pressing environmental challenges.
Jared has spent lots of time adventuring, but he takes that excitement one step further.
I've spent about the last 6 or so years of my career in and around the Colorado State Capitol building, working with various environmental organizations and advocating for bills that increase public lands protections, clean up our air and water, and expand access to the outdoors. Before this, I really found my passion for campaigning when I started an environmental club at my high school, And later, I became a community organizer who worked on a variety of issues, including things like healthcare advocacy, criminal justice reform, and advancing protections for LGBTQ Coloradans. Today, my focus is on building coalitions of environmental organizations and outdoor recreation and education program providers, and working with the Colorado state government to advocate for expanding the Colorado Outdoor Equity Grant Program.
One of the biggest barriers to getting more people outdoors, and the one that Jared is explaining, is funding. This is where the Colorado Outdoor Equity Grant does its work.
So, the idea behind the Outdoor Equity Grant Program really came out of years of deliberations across the Mountain West about ways to most effectively expand youth access to the outdoors. Ultimately, around 2019, 2020, states like New Mexico and California created early versions of what are called outdoor equity funds or outdoor opportunity grant programs. These state and private donor sponsored grant making entities that are usually tied to the state parks, wildlife, or recreation agencies that aim to provide smaller, minimally restrictive grants to outdoor recreation and education organizations that work with underserved youth. In about 2020, Colorado founded our own Outdoor Equity Coalition as part of a larger organization called the Next 100 Colorado, which is a group founded on the centennial anniversary of the National Park Service, whose mission is to racially diversify conservation and recreation and to expand opportunities for careers in the outdoors over the next 100 years. Although the basic idea of what we were creating was clear from the get-go, getting the structure of the program right required a new way of thinking for a lot of the folks on our team. Starting from around a dozen individuals and organizations, the Outdoor Equity Coalition quickly grew to over 100 partners and stakeholders, including big-name national environmental groups, some of Colorado's leading policy organizations, environmental education experts, school districts, and of course, dozens of organizations from across the state who specialize in outdoor education and recreation programs for low-income youth, Black, Latino, and Native youth, LGBTQ youth, and youth with disabilities.
To learn more about some of the benefits on the ground, I had a conversation with two of the grantees who have received funds from the Outdoor Equity Grant Program.
So I help to ensure that our programming is where it needs to be and is reaching the audience that we want to be reaching.
Christy Peoples serves as the Executive Director of Women's Wilderness in Boulder, Colorado.
And I will share also that Women's Wilderness has been around since 1998. So we turned 27 this year. And our mission is to lower barriers to access for women and girls and gender expansive youth and adults.
She went into some of the thought behind the work her organization does on a daily basis.
While it is all about nature engagement and outdoor education, everything that we do for everyone that we serve, ages 8 through 88, and if we have anybody beyond 88, I haven't seen them yet, but they're welcome too. It is informed by what we call conscious choice, which is the understanding that everyone has their right to choose how they are going to approach our activities and our opportunities to connect in the outdoors. It means that we have the right, or the participants have the right to say, hey, I want to do this, but not that. I change my mind, or, this far is far enough and not anymore. We respect everybody's sense of agency and engagement and adventure.
Jack Curry is another person who works to implement outdoor equity funding.
I grew up in, the outdoors is something that's really core to who I am as a person.
Jack Curry is the Executive Director of Riverside Education Centers, or REC, in Grand Junction, Colorado.
And I think I had such wonderful opportunities at a young age in a community of people. I didn't grow up here in a similar way. So I'm also a transplant off the East Coast. I grew up in New Jersey.
Jack's passion and experience with the outdoors drives his desire to provide quality after-school programming centered on outside experiences.
overnight kayaking trips in the Pine Barrens, or hiking up the biggest peak we could find, which was 1,100 feet, Mount Tammany, up at the Delaware Water Gap. But very very quickly, through some opportunities I had to do some guiding work, recognized that, yeah, getting people outside that didn't have that don't just inherently have that opportunity, don't inherently have that desire, was going to be a major driver. I work now at an organization that, we're an after school program, right, is the core of what we do. So we served just over 1,400 students last year across Mesa County. Rec is what I'll call it, an acronym, Riverside Education Centers. Really grew up out of this idea that a strong and structured academic after school program can help bridge that gap and just be that extra shot of equity for kids that, due to no fault of their own, go home to different circumstances, right? Our public education system, in so many ways, is supposed to be this great driver of equity, that you're entitled to the same level of education regardless of the household that you come from. There's a lot of reasons that we don't necessarily meet that mark all the time, but certainly, rec started because we had a teacher here in the valley, saw that, she had a group of specifically Latino students in her classroom that were falling behind, not because they weren't just as smart, not just as capable, but because they went home to different circumstances than other students.
Jared said the Outdoor Equity Grant Program is designed for organizations exactly like Women's Wilderness and Riverside Education Centers.
So organizations that are eligible to receive grants are government institutions like schools, existing state partner organizations, nonprofits that are doing this work directly getting kids outside, businesses like outdoor recreation outfitters who can expand their work to include more youth of color, more youth who historically haven't had those opportunities.
And indeed, both Jack and Christy's organizations have benefited immensely from outdoor equity funding provided by the state of Colorado. They shared some of their experiences of how the funding has improved their programs, or in some cases made the programs possible in the first place.
It helps us really connect to youth in ways that not only encourage more participation in school and self-confidence and team building and body confidence, but it also helps girls connect to each other. So one of our programs that is primarily funded or largely funded through the Outdoor Equity Grant is Outdoor Girls. And that program works with newcomers to the United States, and it helps them really acclimate in a way that is affirmative, meaning that it again meets them where they are. The Outdoor Equity Grant really helps us um, provide opportunities for them to speak um, in their first language. So that might mean we can bring in translators. Also allows for us to provide them with snacks for after school programming. Some of our programming happens during the school hours. And so that means that all the work that we have done through this programming to reach out to newcomer girls means that we have built really trusting relationships with the schools that we serve. The grant funding has allowed us to really spend time cultivating those relationships, because it's not just about going and saying, "Hey, I have this program. We're going to inflict this program on the girls, and it's like locked and loaded, and we're just going to go do it." Having funding that allowed us to really set it up, build trust, and uh, activate these relationships with school officials and teachers has been a tremendous part of our success. It's also giving the teachers a fair amount of support. to have a place where we can have nature engagement, also the social emotional skill sets that we're also teaching through these programs, and having the backing of the administrations um, at these different places of learning, it's huge.
It something that you said, Christy, that really resonated with me was this idea of, there being this upstart period to build trust and build community with schools and educators. And I feel like that has been one of the great strengths of REC, right? Being around since 2006. Our program model is K-12, right? So if we're in a high needs high school, we want to be in all those high needs middle schools that feed that high school, and then all those high needs elementary. So we have a number of students that have been with us, since they were second and third graders, introduced these things that are now, seniors in high school or even in college. And um, one of the things that we've always done is we have these little pop-up opportunities, right? That, somebody's grandma's aunt has a property, we can go for a hike on there. Or, oh, somebody has an interest to take us out on the river for the day, and let's go out rafting, right? And so we've always had these little pop-up opportunities to do that. But based on, we're a free program, right? So we fundraise every dollar. This is, an opportunity for our kids and families that they don't, is no cost to them. And so we're always prioritizing, right? If what's really core to our mission is the academic success of kids and making sure, because that is the best avenue for their social mobility, is to make sure they make it through high school with a post-secondary plan and some options ahead of them. That's always where we're going to prioritize. And so some of this outdoor stuff that we knew in its own right had incredible value from a mental health perspective, from a physical health perspective, from a sense of place, from community building, all these awesome things just kind of got left to opportunity based. It's cool in the years we can do it. It's not going to happen on the years that we have to make sure we're there to make, to get kids' homework done. So what Outdoor Equity has done for us is allowed us to take some of these things that we've piloted over the years. We got a set of cross-country skis donated from a really generous donor. But then you got to have the meals and the staff time and the busing and all those things to get kids up there. And so what it's allowing us to do is to take some of these things that have worked in isolation and now take them system wide for us, right? So now instead of 3 or 4 different trips up onto the Grand Mesa National Forest to go cross country skiing, we're going to do 12 or 15. And now instead of doing one of the components of our program or family engagement events, so we'll get all the families together, maybe 100 or 120 people for a dinner. It might be a picnic outside. Well, now we're going to be able to provide transportation over one of the state parks along the Colorado River and make that a fishing day, right? So, and that work 2 years ago was fantastic, and now we get to sort of scale that across our system.
Dedicated funding for these programs ensures they're not only durable, but effective and collaborative.
And one of the things that we are very excited about in our programming is that we get to collaborate with the participants to find out what they want. Where do you want to go? What do you want to be learning? And that helps to deepen not only their engagement in our programming, but it also helps to provide a channel for them to keep coming back through the programming. So maybe they age out after they go through middle school or they get into high school, and they come back maybe as mentors supporting other people who are coming up through the program. So the Outdoor Equity Fund has allowed us to provide a little bit of a stipend for those participants who are coming back to support the work that supported them through their early years here. And so that's a wonderful outcome for this grant funding. It allows us to identify a need, pilot a program, and really get the buy-in from the participants so that it can grow organically.
Jared explains some of the design goals behind delivering funds to organizations like Jack and Christie's.
The goal behind supporting these types of programs is twofold. First, we are equipping the next generation of Colorado recreationists, conservationists, and sportsmen and women with the kinds of experiences that can foster a lifelong love of the outdoors. Second, by being inclusive of not only youth, but their families as well, grant recipient organizations can expand their offerings to parents and siblings.
He highlighted the need to build accessibility into the outdoors, but also to build sustainable, long term access to the outdoors. These strategies include parental buy in and family engagement.
So they're just as informed about trail etiquette, edible plants, cold weather clothing, permit reservations, how to find the best parking, and every other tip and trick you can think of. This whole family approach ensures that even after the year or two of grant funding wraps up, these kids can go home to a household that is equipped to keep taking them outside.
He says family engagement and family buy in is one of the biggest barriers these programs see when expanding beyond just a one time outdoor experience.
A really big challenge in this space is that if you talk to any kid from Colorado who had the privilege of doing a weekend camping trip or other sort of like guided outdoor activity at school, oftentimes one of the reasons that they'll tell you they didn't end up staying outside or getting back outside later on is because their families weren't taking them, right? If you're a fourth grader, you don't have a car, you're not going to Rocky Mountain National Park. It really does require like that interest in your family, the understanding of how to get there, and a real investment in wanting to spend that time together. We were really thinking that as part of this program, if we could be intentional about how we're building that lifelong kind of like longitudinal engagement, that's really where the effective work is going to happen, and that's really how we're going to meet some of these needs in these underserved communities.
Christy highlighted her own experiences with that growing up.
For me, my mom would like, what are you going, why, who are you going with? What are you doing? Why are you out there in the woods? But if mom understands, then she's going to start, participating in the carpool, in like getting the event set up. Maybe she's going to plan a camping weekend for the family and for me and my friends, and it changes everything. And that is a reduction in barriers to nature engagement, just having more awareness.
Christie's program, in particular, really met this objective to build programming that includes caretakers and parents. Christie explained how she sees that in action.
Maybe let's say they buy a multi-pack of those plastic water bottles. They get more involved in the outdoors and they see what plastics are doing and they see the littering and all that stuff. You know what? We're going to get one of those big containers and we're going to go refill it at the grocery store where it's filtered and and then I'm going to tell my extended family, and you just see how it ripples out exponentially when the whole family is involved. I'm so excited for youth to be interested and engaged, but you get those parents involved cultivating the education and the excitement for it. It's a whole different game.
There are numerous benefits from the outdoor equity programs. Some of them we've already discussed, and some of them are a bit more nuanced. Jack said some of the less discussed benefits are developmental. By going outside, often children and students have the opportunity to learn life lessons that are not taught in the classroom.
If you're camping and you're gonna insist on keeping the rain tarp off or not, tuck in the rain tarp on the side or any of those little things, and then you wake up in the morning and your feet are wet and cold. Like, yeah, we're fine. We're next to the car. You got extra socks. It's not a big deal, but that cause and effect, and making sure giving safe opportunities. But I think the outdoors does such a good job at offering, at least in the way that we're sort of talking about it, and breaking down barriers and allowing people to access nature under their own terms. It offers so many sort of safe environments to learn that cause and effect, and to be in your challenge zone in a really nice way.
For any of us, if we're traveling in a group, if we're going out in a group, if we're camping, if we're backpacking, if we're running, if we're doing anything, one of the first things we know is that we have to rely on each other, right? Like that's just it. It's a great leveler. Nature doesn't care how much education you have, how much money you have, doesn't matter what language you speak. And nature has a lot to teach us. Now, people coming from different lived experiences, like I just spoke about, coming from the East Coast, coming from, being a flatlander relocating to Colorado. It was a whole new thing. Outdoor recreation meant something entirely different than what I was used to. And now we have people coming from entirely different cultures coming in to, climb a 14er, coming in to take a hike, at Red Rocks or whatever. They are coming with very different lived experiences. I'll give you an example. So we have a program called Outdoor Women, which is newcomer women um, who also want to have an outdoor experience. So we had our leaders taking them out on a hike, and our leaders started to point out the different flora and fauna on the trail, and they started sharing about the names that they called the plants and what the medicinal purposes were and what it was known for in their home countries. And so that right there is a huge learning opportunity for us all. Hey, we know a lot, and you also know a lot, and we can benefit from that shared experience of being out together, moving in these spaces that are familiar to us but unfamiliar to others. And so we get to see it through fresh eyes. We get to come back with new information and new skills. And so it's not just something that we're doing for them, we also get to learn alongside them. And that's another aspect of just the way that we do things at Women's Wilderness, learning from each other rather than thinking we are the ones to impose all the learning on other people. The other thing is that learning from people who are different than us is always beneficial because it rounds out our education. It gives us something more to think about and build on that we didn't have before.
Even as an adult, I can think of numerous lessons landscapes have taught me that I was forced to pay attention to. Christy also talked about how those lessons can run deeper and provide students with the tools they need to navigate complex issues like body positivity and self-confidence.
For one of our programs, it's Girls Lead for Life, and it's a rock climbing program. And we hear from the participants after they go through this program, like 10 to 13 weeks. They learned about body confidence. They learned that, instead of being reactive to what other people thought about them or what they thought about themselves or their bodies or whatever, they learned that they can rely on themselves. They learn that they can use their voice, because in rock climbing you have to use your voice. If you're speaking to your belayer, if you're yelling down those commands or yelling up those commands, you have to be in communication. And we also hear a lot of times from the caregivers and parents, well, now, she has a lot more patience for her siblings. She is speaking up and doing a lot better in school. She is more confident.
The outdoors offer an opportunity to learn life skills holistically and intuitively. Those experiences are the ones that might be taken for granted, but are foundational for setting up students for success. Jack also pointed out a few more benefits he sees as an educator.
I work and live in a school district that is sort of spearheading the cell phone policies, like a uniform cell phone policy for schools. But this idea of like long focus and the importance of staying focused on something over time is one of the things that I find such value in the outdoors, right? If you're trail running or you're mountain biking and you take your eyes off that trail for a second, you can put yourself in a bad way pretty quickly. Same thing with skiing, same thing with climbing, same thing with so many of these things. And I think being in those environments that demand your attention and demand your focus over a long period of time does massages my brain in a beautiful way. And I love seeing that in our kids as well. Is right, you get kids that have a really hard time staying focused in the classroom, and you put them in these environments that really require their attention for more than a 6-second snippet, and they thrive.
I think it also benefits us by expanding the conversation and learning more about the land and how we can how we can really access our right to be on it and recreate in ways that honor the lands and learn more about the traditions of people who have been here before us, understand how we can take care of it so that it's here for future generations. I think that absolutely benefits all Coloradans. We learn about different ways to engage as well. And again, nature is a great equalizer. It's a great way to come together and to learn about um, new ways to engage as well. So I think, even though it seems like most people or a lot of people already understand and, recreate on the lands and engage in all these deep ways, being new to Colorado, it might seem like everybody's doing it, but everybody's not doing it. And so through grant programs like this, it allows more people a chance to participate and share in the ways that maybe they grew up doing it, and that helps other people learn about it. Like I said, with outdoor women from other countries coming in teaching us how they did it. I think that bodes well for everybody because we get to learn and grow together, and it also opens up the creativity for us all to learn new ways of caring for these places that we'd love to work and play in.
On top of those qualitative benefits, Jared had some quantitative numbers to back up the positive impacts of outdoor equity programming. He says outdoor equity has awesome impacts on the culture of outdoor spaces, but it's also just good for business.
But when we're talking about getting more people into Colorado's outdoors, when we're talking about equipping more youth to become lifelong, folks who are spending their time in the outdoors, who are contributing to our outdoor recreation economy, we're seeing big, impactful numbers in the state. To quote the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office webpage, our outdoor economy contributes to a higher quality of life, making people and communities happier and healthier. Colorado hosts 22 million acres of public land, over 105,000 miles of rivers, 690 peaks over 13,000 feet, and expansive vistas of prairies, mountain valleys, desert canyons. And these spaces are central to Colorado's lifestyle, heritage, identity, and world-class recreation. And I have to say, the economic figures themselves show just how valuable it is to get Coloradans outside. A recent report released by Colorado Parks and Wildlife in 2023 indicates that Colorado's outdoor rec economy contributed to over 400,000 jobs, representing about 12% of the state's total employment, over $11 billion in tax revenue, $22 billion in salaries and wages, and a total economic impact of about $66 billion. These jobs and these dollars aren't just a critical component of Colorado's statewide economy either. Much of these benefits are distributed around the state, with much of it going into rural and frontier communities who can gain the most out of these kinds of local economic drivers.
One of the biggest reasons to build diverse outdoor communities isn't as obvious on the surface, but it's quite important.
You care about the things that you touch, you care about the things you spend time in, and our joint public opinion and a lot of these decisions about the future of these resources are going to be made through the ballot box, good, bad, or otherwise, and so making sure that a critical mass of our population has real hands-on experience and understanding of the benefit of these spaces is really, really important for all of us.
Outdoor equity can also raise awareness for the value of public lands and why we need to work so hard to protect them.
Let's say being in nature together provides you with new ways of understanding what it means to care for the planet, what it means to protect, defend, serve, steward our open spaces in ways that maybe haven't occurred to you before, that means that you're going to be a different kind of participant in the outdoor space. Now, being a participant who cares a lot about the outdoors means that you do want to serve it. You do want to understand more about how you can protect it and how you can be engaged in that conversation. Now, if you're not engaged in that conversation and there are other interests that would say, the land, protecting the land isn't so important. We need to extract the resources out of it. There's less there's less pushback. There's less resistance to that because these voices are not engaged in the conversation, and if you're living in a place where resources are being depleted, there are negative health impacts to where you live because of the ways certain businesses are behaving, the more you learn about how to respond to that and how to get that fixed means it's going to cause a problem for somebody who is benefiting from polluting the land or from not cleaning up behind themselves, So eliminating barriers to nature engagement means that we have a more informed society. We have more people who understand what it means to protect the earth. We have more people who are engaged in the conservation conversation. We have more people who have access to working in those fields.
Something that jumps out to me with this particular topic, and something that we talk about often in Grand Junction, is this idea of a sticky community, right, and a sticky education system. And I think one of the things that outdoor equity and experiences in nature provide is a pride and a sense of place. We're 4 hours from the nearest metropolitan center, and there's a lot of desert to the west of us, and there's lots of mountains to the east of us that can feel like a huge barrier and feel really, really isolating. And so what we see so often is, right, once kids grow up that do have options, or go to Salt Lake City, or they go to Vegas, or they go to Denver, right? Like, they're moving out of this county because they don't necessarily have an appreciation for how beautiful the place is that they live. And so, that's one of those things that has a very clear economic benefit to me for these communities that are able to use some of these funds. Mesa County, Grand Junction being one of those, is building a sense of place in our young people.
When we open up the outdoors to a wider range of people, there's more people who can see the depth of our dependence on our landscapes and why it's so critical that we protect them.
We live just a few miles away from a national monument, right? And yeah, I mean, Black Canyon, just 2 hours. There's a lot of incredible outdoor activities and a lot of things to be really proud of here. But yeah, in some of our neighborhoods, that isn't super apparent to you if you're not able to get in those.
How do we keep this important work going? Well, Jared had some answers on that work happening behind the scenes to make sure the outdoor equity programs have a long and bright future.
So, back in 2021, before we knew just how massive of a success the OEGP would be, we worked with leaders at the Department of Natural Resources and Colorado Parks and Wildlife to initially establish a fairly small program that would start low and ramp up for a couple of years to an annual cap of $3 million worth of grants year over year. This modest level of funding would provide grants to maybe 30 to 50 organizations annually, and would provide the Coalition and Colorado Parks and Wildlife with the needed data to evaluate the efficacy of the program. Like with any new idea for a government grant-making program, starting small is critical. If the fund is underutilized, it could attract attention from curious legislators or other agencies during tough budget years who are looking for a quick buck. Especially for new programs, all eyes are on the board and the grant recipients to see just how valuable the impact would be. And oh man, have we been blown away by how insanely popular this program has been. In the first couple of years since the first grants went out the door, the OEGP has provided 141 grants, resourcing 111 organizations in 51 of Colorado's 64 counties, and has gotten over 43,000 youth and family members out into nature. Since its inception, more than 40 million in grant requests have been submitted to the board, with the vast majority of applications meeting the eligibility criteria and receiving really high scores for the program efficacy and scope. But despite this success and high demand, only about $8.5 million in grants have gone out the door, with the most recent grant cycle only funding roughly 14% of the total requests demanded. We believe that it's time to right-size the grant program, and the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission agrees. In a recent commission meeting, they correctly observed that another wildly popular CPW grant program funded by the Habitat Stamp Committee distributes funding for about 50% of its total grant requests. So, this year, we're fighting to unlock the additional funding necessary to right-size the Outdoor Equity Grant Program, and to ensure that more grant applications are funded, supporting programs that make it so that more kids than ever before can get outside and experience the mountains, forests, dunes, slopes, and canyons that make Colorado so quintessentially Colorado.
Some more good news is that Colorado isn't the only state with the opportunity to build out funding to empower outdoor equity initiatives. Nevada and New Mexico also have outdoor equity funding bills going through the legislature in 2025. As families grow more disconnected from nature, it's more important than ever to get children outside to ensure they reap nature's benefits.
What's great is that not only does this funding already exist, but it exists in a place within the state constitution and state statute that requires it to be used for a narrow set of conservation, wildlife, state park, and outdoor recreation purposes, just like the Outdoor Equity Grant Program. And more good news, over the past several years since the program was created, 3 new state laws benefiting Colorado Parks and Wildlife have increased their operating budget by a projected $100 million year over year through a new and innovative State Parks Pass program, alongside new fees on oil and gas production. Altogether, these massive revenue spikes leave considerable wiggle room to free up the necessary cash in order to meet the demand for outdoor equity grants without pulling funding from other critical state conservation work.
We think these initiatives are important, not just for the inherent value of strengthening the outdoor culture of the West and opening gateways for youth to get outside, but for empowering the next generation of leaders and advocates.
And a big part of the idea here is that by being inclusive of a wide variety of entities, we could make sure that these grants were deployed directly where they were needed the most and directly to the organizations that were doing this work the best. A lot of groups maybe don't have a super formal, large structured nonprofit organizations or other types of businesses, especially if you're looking at, say, like an after-school program, at an elementary school that's hosted by a teacher. When we're reducing the paperwork burden, when we're reducing a lot of the formal requirements here and focusing really on the impact of the program, that ensures that, the entire spectrum of folks who are doing their best to get kids outside can access these resources.
The more people that know about and connect to these landscapes, that know about the threats they face and what solutions are available, the more voices there are to speak out and protect them.
There's a lot of fear right now. And with these various grant programs and funding, we don't know from one moment to the next what's going to happen, who holds the fate of our programs and our jobs and our organizations, who holds it in their hands. But I would say that one thing that's inspiring me right now is the communities and the people that we serve. We know that our work makes an impact, and we are seeing support from our community. That aspect of the community supporting each other really inspires us. Somebody's got to do the work. I think it's up to us. And I am increasingly encouraged by what I am seeing from the people that we serve.
Yeah, I'll jump in with a similar message. I feel, and Christy, this is kind of what you're saying, is like I feel so fortunate to be able to feel like the work that I do on a day-to-day basis is working in the direction of a world I want to see and I want my kids to see. And so, I'll throw a small call to action out there, right, for anybody that's listening to this is, go into your communities. Every one of these communities has some great organizations doing great work. We need bike mechanics, right? Go find, go find something similar in your community where, you're able to, that old anecdote, right? Action is the cure to anxiety, right? And so find an opportunity to, give yourself some long focus, right? Get off of social media and find a place and a vessel for some of that energy and some of that action.
We can't let kids miss out on the power of the outdoors. To empower more youth to know the landscapes of the West is to empower the next generation of climate advocates. If you'd like to learn more or support the work that Jack and Christy do, you can find more about their organizations, Riverside Education Centers and Women's Wilderness, respectively, in the show notes. You can also learn about Jared's work with the Next 100 Colorado in the show notes. If you want to track our progress on the funding and the outdoor equity programs, and want updates on what the state legislatures in the West are doing, especially in a time when state-level action is a pretty important method of action, you can join our email list. We'll be sending you updates and opportunities for you to support key initiatives throughout the legislative session. Did you like what you've heard? Bring others into the conversation. Share our show with friends, family, and group chats alike. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and LinkedIn to get the latest climate news from the West and hear about upcoming episodes. You can find all of our show notes, a full transcription of this episode, and further resources to learn about outdoor equity in the West at westernresourceadvocates.org. Lastly, WRA would like to thank our sponsors who make this work possible. Our impact sponsor is First Bank. Our premier sponsor is Vision Ridge Partners. Our supporting sponsors are BSW Wealth Partners, GoCo, Group 14 Engineering, Jones & Co., Meridian Public Affairs, and SolUp. Thank you for listening.